All right. So Norvell was asked, I think by Zach, so speaking of the beat, was asked about making some changes to his staff due to their recruiting over the last couple of years. And obviously Norvell did that, but it was good to actually hear him be asked about this pretty directly. And Norvell admitted he made some pretty extreme changes to the staff based on recruiting. Now, I will say, I think that last year's recruiting class was probably based on record, was probably the best one he's had so far. Now, it's not the best one he's had, but finishing
Coming off 2
12th,
wins. Yeah.
finishing 12th when you win 13 games, to me, it's almost more impressive to finish 19th when you win 2 games, right? Nah, I mean, obviously the 13th ranked class is likely better and has more of an impact down the street. But anyway, so funny enough, I thought, this year was maybe the best job he's done yet by getting into number 19, as weird as that is to admit. But the recruiting just hasn't been good enough. The focus on high school hasn't been good enough. And I think he knows that and made some pretty big changes. I guess my big question would be, do we see it pay off? Do we see it matter? I want to say yes, because I just don't know if it could be much worse. But at the same time, are they able to capitalize on that, on some of the changes that they've made with Malzahn's SEC ties, with his ties at UCF? Obviously, you'd think like some relationships that he would have had there, some of the ties the Nebraska guys had. Like, how big of a difference can that make? Your wide receiver coach coming from South Florida, I think that's a big deal. But you've got to certainly win to back it up. Although I will say, wins and losses matter. But as much as it pains me to admit, I just watched a Florida team have 7 regular season wins. They had 7 wins by the time signing day happened, and they came away with a top 10 class. I think they finished like 7th or 8th. And so, yeah, I mean, wins and losses are certainly important, but good recruiters find a way to recruit. And, I don't know. I think it was good to hear Norvell admit changes to recruiting, because for a long time, I don't mean this as a dig or a slam, because I like Mike a lot personally. And I think he does a lot of things really well as a coach too. Don't get me wrong, but I have long held the opinion that he just didn't care about recruiting. Like, that's the vibe. I mean, if Tiger doesn't change his stripes or whatever you want to say. I have a tough time believing that he truly cares, that he hasn't shown in his efforts that he truly cares. And be that, landing the top tier talent that he goes after every year, be that being willing to pay for guys and up the bag at times to keep the big dogs away, or be that holding coaches accountable for their failures, right? And he's never going to go up there on a signing day press conference and say, hey, yeah, we struck out, we failed. There's a kid that plays safety that flipped to Georgia at the last second. We're pretty upset about it. He's never going to say that, but we all know the reality of it. And so I don't know if anything's truly changed on his perspective on it. But I do think it's good that he at least admitted it. He at least admitted, hey, yeah, I'm trying to get better in this area, because it has. I mean, listen, this isn't a slight against any kid that's come in. Recruiting at this university has been a massive failure for about the last 7 years, maybe the last 8 if you include Jimbo's last season too. How many top 10 classes are there in that last time frame? Like, any? Have we had a top 10 class since 2017? I think recruiting has been a pretty big failure for the last 7 or 8 years at this university, considering what this university has done in that time frame. You've had, you've had a lot of losses, don't get me wrong, but you've also won an ACC championship. You've had a couple of 10-win seasons in there. And again, your rivals are recruiting laps around you, and they don't have more wins than you over the last 8 years. Like, it is very even. So anyway, hopefully the changes that he's made will make a difference. Sorry, I've rambled there, but I'll give you a chance to throw in a couple of cents too. All right, I'll get right back to the video, but first I want to give some love to our friends over at Russo & Co. I told you about Chris Russo and his business last week, and it is certainly tax season. Hopefully you've already gotten your 1099s or your W-2s. Listen, Chris is a huge Florida State fan, just like you and I are. He's been a CPA since 2002. He got his MBA in 2004. He's also got a law degree. He's got 25 plus years of experience doing this stuff. And if you need assistance with any tax preparation, any tax advisory, if you need help with preparing 1099s or W-2s for employees, if you own a business, give my guy Chris a call. His info is down in the description. You can also see it here on the screen. Again, Chris will do his very best to get you taken care of, to make sure that you're getting your maximum refund, that you keep as little in the IRS's hands as possible. But of course, doing everything legally and not getting you in trouble. Chris will hold your hand every step of the way. If you mention that you saw his information here on Double Fries No Slaw, he'll give you a free consultation. Again, it's Russo & Co. Great guy, great Seminole, and hopefully if you are in need of any tax services, you will certainly reach out to him. We'll tell you more about him as the weeks and months go on, as we lead up to tax season. But again, appreciate Chris at Russo & Co. for their support.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, Jimbo did not recruit at all at his final year at Florida State.
Yeah, I included 17 in there.
I firmly believe he knew he was going to A&M in September of that year, right after A&M lost to UCLA, but that's another topic for another day. We'll have another few slow weeks. Maybe we can deep dive into that. But yeah, I think Mike's biggest problem, which was a blessing and a curse, is he just struck gold in the portal so many times early on, right? Nobody wanted Johnny Wilson. Nobody wanted Trey Benson because of his injury at Oregon. Jared Verse was highly sought after, but he was still from Albany. Then you think of like a Braden Fisk and Pierre Thomas and Jerrion Jones. His hit rate was, looking back, it was clearly unsustainable. And I think he just thought in his mind, I'll get who I can get out of high school, but I'll just use the portal to fill my roster every year. And then last year we brought in a ton of portal guys. Did any of them really work out? Like, you won 2 games, so I think the answer is clearly no. You had no postseason accolades. So I think he got a little too comfortable in the portal, and now he realizes, oh crap, high school does matter. And I think, imagine the trajectory of his high school recruiting if Travis Hunter doesn't flip on signing day to Dion. And that was going to happen regardless. It was. The safety that you mentioned that flipped to Georgia. This staff, or Mike Norvell's staff as a whole, because I know it's changed a bit, they have failed to close on signing day. Not only flips, but guys that they're in the top 3-4 that you feel really good about, and they just pick other schools. The high school recruiting does have to improve, and the fact that he's finally acknowledging it, I think that's really important. And for him to publicly acknowledge it, I think it is a positive sign, in my opinion, because that's not something you publicly acknowledge. Most coaches would be like, oh no, we're going to recruit the guys we want who fit our culture. A lot of coach speak. He's just coming straight out and saying, listen, yeah, we need to do better. And we do. And I think he realizes that. And what I love about the Gus Malzahn hire, I'd love that he's going to take over play calling and let Mike be more of a CEO. But he's played the dirtiest of games, right? In the SEC when it comes to recruiting. Like that's just a fact. It cannot be disputed. So he knows how to play the game. NIL, I don't think Florida State's going to get outbid by anyone, quite frankly, unless it's just egregious. If Ole Miss has the money, Texas A&M has the money to where they could extremely overpay for a player based on market value. So those are going to happen in the NIL era. But for the most part, if all things are even, NIL is even, I do think we will see improvement when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah.
Especially at the high school level.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, he did hit in the portal, but like, even when he was hitting in the portal, like Travis Hunter flipped in 2021. That was well before like a lot of that portal success. Keldrick Falk, who is killing it at Auburn, right? Starting defensive end, kind of linebacker, jack position type player. Absolutely killing it. That was I think he was class of 22, so before we had seen the hit rate of John, like we had Johnny in the boat, but like we didn't know that he was like that guy yet because he hadn't played a game yet.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, like even, and then he's continued to miss on those top targets. Flipped away
every year.
And 2017, that recruiting class, Jimbo's last, give a damn recruiting class, right? So like the recruiting class that was signed in February of Jimbo's last year was 6th. We did finish.
I'll say bust after every single bust. Go for it.
Say what?
Name the top guys of that class, and I'll tell you who was a bust, because there was a lot
in the 17 class. So they finished 6th. I'll do it real quick. The 17 class had Cam Akers, really good. Kane Doe, Marvin Wilson, LeBourne was a bust for sure. DJ Matthews, not very.
But
DJ
was
Matthews
LeBourne a bust because he went on and killed it once he left Florida State?
he busted at FSU, so
Yeah,
you know.
that's fair.
Stanford Samuels was in that class.
Solid.
Trey McKitty was in that class. I like Trey McKitty. Bailey Hockman was in that class. Remember him? Ontario Pokey
Yeah,
Wilson.
the lefty.
Yeah, Pokey Wilson was in that class.
Pokey
There
was a
some
good one.
ones. Yeah, there were certainly guys in that class but like that wasn't a bad class for sure. Cyrus Fagan, who went on to NC State. Hamza Nasruddin, he was pretty good for a
It
time.
was awesome.
Yeah, they weren't. That was a good class. Since then, no top 10 classes. Number 18. So Willie's first year, we did finish 11th. That was, actually better than. Now there were a lot
Let
of.
me say something about that real quick.
That class had a lot of busts, and then 24 you had a top 12 class. But yeah, no top 10 classes since 2017. That's actually crazy to think about at Florida State University.
Yeah.
So
and Willie, credit to him. He had literally, I think it was 10 days to put together a class. So by no means do I blame him, but he added a ton of high 4 stars and mid 4 stars the last few days before. But again, if you're a high 4 star
from California,
if you're a high 4 star and you don't have a home 5 days before signing day, there's something going on there.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not going to make any assumptions about any teenagers, but there's a reason if you're that highly ranked and you don't have a home yet, that there's something going on there.
Something wrong.
And people know that. The coaches know that.
So we'll see. It's got to get better. To be very honest with you, I don't have great expectations. I'll tell you this. Let's wrap up with this. What are your expectations? I'll give you mine first, but what are your expectations for this FSU recruiting class? Let's assume Florida State wins between 7 and 8 games. I think that's fair, right? Their over under is 7.5. We're not going crazy saying that they're going to win 10. And I'm also not like so much on the doom and gloom that I say they win 4 or 5. So let's say they win between 7 and 8 games. They're more competitive this year. I don't think they're super competitive at Clemson. I do think Bama wins. Let's say they win between 7 and 8 games. My realistic expectation is that this needs to be a top 13 to 15 class. Now, do I think that's good enough at Florida State? No, I don't. I just think there are a lot of teams ahead of them that are ultimately going to recruit better. I think when you look at, the landscape of college football and you think about like the teams you're not going to out recruit this year. Like, I don't really see a way that you out-recruit Oregon and Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia and Notre Dame and LSU and Michigan and Ohio State and, let's be very fair, probably either one of, if not both, Florida and Miami. And so, I just gave you 10 teams, and I probably left somebody out. Penn State recruits really well. Texas A&M recruits really well. Clemson recruits really well. USC recruits really well. Ole Miss, I think you could beat Ole Miss. But I'm just telling you, I don't see how you recruit a lot of those teams I just mentioned. So I think your ceiling is probably around 12. But if you can finish 12 to 15 this year by going 7 and 5, 8 and 4, I think. Am I okay with that big picture? No. Am I okay with that understanding where we've come from last year? Probably.
I think 5 years in, you need to be top 12 every single year, because my theory is it's a 12-team playoff, right?
That's a good point. Yep.
So you would at that point think you have a roster that is capable of making the playoff every year, and it's going to expand. I don't know if it'll expand in the next year or two, but it will expand. But my thought is that anything outside of the top 12 is a complete failure. Because I think Florida State every year should be a top 10 class. So I'm giving you 2 spots of leeway. And if you cannot figure out a way to get in the top 12, that's an issue in my opinion. And, as that buyout goes down year after year after year, and you continue to sign the 14th ranked class and the 19th ranked class and all of this, and your coaching is not doing what it needs to do, he's not going to last. And I know we weren't planning to go there, and I love Coach Norvell, and I think Mike Lawford is a phenomenal AD. I'm just not sure Norvell's going to make it, because I think recruiting is his biggest downfall.
Yeah, it's tough to see what the path is at this point if he can't get. Now, listen, right now they have a top 10 class. In fact, they might even be top 5 right now.
Stay in there, and he's going to be fine.
Yeah, they've got a really good class, and so there are chances, there are ways that you could actually. They dropped a little bit. I'm sorry, when they lost their quarterback, they dropped a little bit. I take all that back. Yeah, it's got to get better. It's got to, and we'll see if it does or not this year.